will let you know my name is Rachel, and I'll be running the session today, but Rebecca is helping me. Both of us are on the MASH advisory team, and you can see we have Jennifer and Tammy in the background also watching. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask them in the chat or comments. It's also okay to just take your mute off and ask questions as we go along, and I'll prompt that. So Rebecca's going to answer any questions if they seem like, if she feels like she's comfortable answering them, if they come up in the chat. Otherwise, I will answer those as we go. So let's get started. My name is Rachael Fessick-Lamb, but you can just call me Rachel. And I teach in the Faculty of Education at the University of Manitoba. So I teach teachers. And what's funny about this, I have worked in public schools and I'm a great supporter of public schools, but I'm also a huge supporter of alternative educations. And that's why we've homeschooled from the beginning, because it makes sense for our family, and it's made sense for some of my nephews who I've homeschooled too. And one of the other things about it is I have studied a few things like brain compatible learning, which sounds like really big, okay? Brain-based learning. And if you look at the second part of the title, teaching the way students really learn. And something like this, which we're going to talk about tonight, is what we're hoping teachers and schools are going to do with their kids and really work towards. But honestly, it's tough for a teacher to do this. It's tough to do this with those large quantities of kids, and it is much easier for us as homeschoolers when we have fewer kids and we know them really well. To get started, actually we'll do this first. To get started, I want to screen share. We're just going to see how our brains are working today. Just a second here. I got to get this thing a little smaller and get my screen share button. This is what we're sharing. Are you smarter than a fifth grader? That is the question. So to get started, if you've got a piece of paper or something to take notes on, let's see how we do. So let's see here how many questions we can answer. I love this part here. My daughter, an actual fifth grader, wants to see if she can stump you. These are all her questions. I'm just sitting back for moral support. So the first question is, which of the following is the glucose in a plant not used for? Which of the following is the glucose in a plant not used for? So you can go A, B, C, D, or you can write the word. Honestly, I haven't done this and I don't know the answers. This is my guess, but I honestly don't know. Although we did study plants in grade 3, by the way. Number 2, which of the following do plants need in order to create oxygen? Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen dioxide, or methane? I'm going with this one. Not sure though. So you're writing your answers. Don't pick my answers. Pick your own answers. Which of the following is not a process skill in science? Observe, check, shop, or look. I'm going to go with shopping. You pick your own. In which city of the United States was the United States Constitution originally created? I'm wondering if this grade 5 girl is from the US. You got your answer written down? Don't copy mine. Do your own. That's my guess. All right, watch Tony run. Is it a complete sentence? I'm going with yes, but that's just me. I should make some things that I don't think are true. Which of the following also means they are? I'm just going to say this because I want, even this one I know for sure. Where are the famous mound builders' Serpent Mound? This is a US. I have no clue. Gonna guess that one because it goes with the shopping one that I previously said. Nearly done. What tribe is credited with the invention of the kayak? Look at your options. Who do you think invented the kayak? Gonna go with the Inuit myself. I don't know this one either. In poetry, how many lines are in a quatrain? 4 or 5. I'm going to say 4. And then the last one, there's a whole big build-up here. But the question at the end is, what do you call words that have the opposite meaning of each other? I know the answer, but I'm going to pick this one because I want to be wrong. Submit the answers. Okay, check your answers quickly. Did you pick camouflage? Okay, what's glucose not used for? Did you pick carbon dioxide? That's what plants need to make oxygen. Oh my God, I got right, shopping. What's part of the scientific method? Which one of these wasn't scientific? Philadelphia. Did you get that one for the US Constitution? I know there because I went on a trip there. That's how I know. Watch Tony run is a sentence. It's an imperative. Watch Tony run. Did you all get they are for there? That one? Yeah, I did that on purpose. I had no clue about this one, Ohio River. Did y'all get the Inuit for the kayak? Hoping so. Oh, look, my guess was right for number 9. Total guess. A quatrain is 4. And opposites are antonyms. So here's the question. Did y'all pass 5th grade? How come you don't know that? How come you couldn't answer all the questions? Well, maybe it's because they were US based. Maybe it's because you're just normal. Because a lot of those questions are trivia. And we are now going to start to talk about how our brains work with learning, and I'm going to relate it back to this. So we're going to share screen this one. Can you see my PowerPoint? Give us a thank you. Awesome. So here's the deal. This is what happens in our brains. It's called the forgetting curve. When you learn new information, within 1 hour, you forget 50% of it. And within 24 hours, it's more than 50%. And a week later, it's 90% you're going to lose. There's things we can do to make this not happen, but this is what will happen in your brain if we don't do these other things that I'm going to talk about. So first of all, I'm going to start with a story. And this is research that was done with medical students in the United States. If you can imagine a medical school class, and in that medical school class, they give information to those doctors, just lists and lists and lists of information in those lectures. So we're going to do the respiratory system. Here's all the parts of the respiratory system. Here's how they interact and here's how it works. Let's move to the circulatory system. Here's each part of the circulatory system, how they interact and how they work. Now it's nervous system. Nervous system is actually controlling all of it, and these are the parts, and this is how it works. And then at the end of it, they all walk out of the lecture hall. So in the 1980s, someone said, maybe this isn't the best way to teach. So here's what they did. They took 2 sections of the same course for medical students, first-year med students. The first section, they taught like usual. Information, 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 information. And those students just took all those notes. The second section, they only taught half the information. Information, information, information. What'd they do for the rest of the class? They discussed it. They looked at case studies. They problem solved. And they talked about the information from the first half. And then they took a test at the end. They didn't know they were going to have a test. At the end of the class, they took a test. Who remembered more? The people who had more information, did they remember more? Or did the people who had half the information? Can you all hit your chats? Find your chat at the bottom of your screen, on the bottom of your Zoom. I want you to jump in there and tell me the people who had all the information or the people who had half the information. Who remembered more? Christina got it. Julie got it. You got it. See how smart we all are? You're awesome. So you're right. They only got half the information, but they remembered more of the information, like more than the people who got twice as much. They didn't know it was coming. But 2 weeks later, they were given another test on that course, on that class. They did it again. The folks who had half the amount of information did better than the folks with the full amount. They could have studied in those past 2 weeks. They didn't know the test was coming, though. Nonetheless, the people who had half the amount of information did better. This is how we get rid of the forgetting curve. We teach less, but we teach it better. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to throw one more idea at you first. Our brains can handle 3 to 7 new concepts at a time. 3 to 7 new ideas. I'm pushing it tonight because I'm going to give you a few more than that, but I could boil it down. So 3 to 7 new ideas at a time. In addition, I know that you can't listen any more than this amount of time. Your brain physically will tune out without you being able to help it. At some point here, it's going to tune out on me. So I have to watch my clock, and I can't keep talking. So what do we do instead of that? Instead of that, we need to think about the information. And with what I have said, can you guess why you don't remember the stuff from grade 5? It goes further than what I've said already, but do you have any guesses? Why don't you remember that stuff from grade 5? You can put it in the chat if you have an idea. Do you ever take, oh, yes. Thank you, Christina. She's got one. We don't use it. That's right. Any other ideas?
Where's the chat, Rachel? Where do I type in there?
I think
it's Patrice.
Yeah, I see ya. Hi. It's at the bottom of your Zoom.
Oh, I think my screen's just too big.
That could be if you make your screen.
You have to hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen and then the menu shows up.
Oh, okay.
It hides on you.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm going to say it was way too much in a short amount of time.
So it was more than 3 to 7 pieces of information in a short amount of time, and it wasn't repeated. It wasn't interesting, and she was thinking about lunch and recess. You are absolutely right. So now I'm bringing in a whole bunch of concepts, and I'm going to want you to put them all together in the end. Do you see what I just did? I spent too much time writing notes to my friends, not notes on the topic, Melanie. All right. So I just did something. I said, we're going to put this in all together at the end. That's actually a good thing to do. You're prepping the mind. You are now going, oh, okay, this is going somewhere and I'm going to be responsible for it. So that's one idea. So watch this. Okay, you ready? Our brains are full of neurons. This is my little representation of a neuron. A neuron is a brain cell. Don't stop listening. Stop, like focus on me now. You're like, oh my God, she's teaching biology. Okay, our brains are full of neurons. It's like a tumbleweed mess. And those brain cells are important for everything we do. Our breathing, our blinking, our walking, our talking, our problem solving, our memorizing, all these connections. And here's what happens. When you learn something new, there's a little connection between two ideas. So you were sitting there in grade 3 or grade 5, you know about plants, they're in your garden, you see them in the park, and then someone connected it to the idea that they make oxygen. As soon as you connect those ideas in your head, you've opened up a conversation between neurons. But you know what? It's not a very strong conversation. It's not strong. It's just weak. But if we talk about it again, like the medical students did, the connection gets a little stronger. They did activities, they did discussions. Then, if we do something else, okay, folks, I want you to draw me a picture of how do plants make oxygen? Just whatever kind of picture you can make, I'm asking my child. The more we talk about it, the more we do different activities with the same ideas, the stronger the connection. It can get so strong that it gets covered up with a white fatty protein. And that's called myelin. There is no test on this, by the way. Myelin makes that connection super strong. All right, here comes your next quiz in the chat. I want you all to write the answer. What is, don't look at anyone else's answers. What is 5 times 5 plus 4? Man, you are smart. How do you know that? But you don't know about glucose in plants. There's a couple of reasons how you know about that. Adrian's got it. It's the repetition and the repetition in different ways. After you got your multiplication and addition concepts, you started using those concepts in different ways. Just like those medical students. They got all their notes and then they started using their notes. And then they went out on a practicum in the hospital and they really started talking about that stuff. That's what's going to make this coding to make it firm and make it stick. Okay, I'm going to stop for a moment. I need you all to ask me any questions or have any comments before we keep moving. Okay, then we're going to move on here. So the big ideas here are this. People are going to forget stuff. But you know what overrides this? And you've told me it. I'm going to repeat it. What can override these numbers is repetition. The other thing that can override these numbers is interest, and you already said it. If you are very deeply interested in that topic, this doesn't go anywhere anymore. You're going to make the connections right away. If you are super interested in skateboarding, and now you're looking at the history of skateboarding and you're learning physics with skateboarding, those physics ideas are going to stick because you're interested in it. So here's the things we need to do. To make it stick, we need spaced learning. Spaced learning means, this is what research says, 7 spaced encounters with an idea. So how many times have you done 5 times 5, 5 multiplied by 5 in your life? You've had a lot of encounters with that question and that concept. But were you learning about plants for a 2-week period in grade 3, and then you never talked about it again? I can tell you right now, I had no clue about glucose until I read that right here today. I just kind of guessed what made sense to me. I didn't know. It didn't emotionally connect to me. I really didn't care about glucose in plants. And if I learned it in school, it was only for a couple weeks or maybe a month, and I wrote a test, and maybe I did well on my test, but now it's like 40 years later or more. And I don't have that connection anymore. 7 spaced encounters means you need to work with the information today. We need to talk about it today. Maybe you're going to work with it again tomorrow and maybe the next day. And then you stop and you talk about it next week. And then you talk about it the following week. You have to talk about it 7 times, but not 7 times in 1 week. 7 spaced times. And that's what the idea of a spiral learning. You keep coming back to those big ideas. If you don't come back, guess what happens in your brain? Well, when I think about plants, these are my plants. This is glucose, I think, or oxygen, or I don't know what. Stuff that isn't meaningful to me. It's not interesting. So I do have another connection. My connection here is garden. Okay, so that's my neuron connection for garden. So as I've grown up, I've been interested in planting things. So now I'm making a connection here. The more I read about gardening, the stronger this connection gets. But here, the fatty protein is going away on the connection to that information about glucose because it is not a priority in my brain anymore. If it's not a priority, I'm not going to keep it. It's going to break down. And all this information, these connections are slowly going to break down, and you can completely change your brain. This connection is gone, but now I have a whole other connection about plants. And there's a gabillion connections. If I say the word plant, I'm going to say it here. In my brain, there's a connection to, oh, it starts with P. There's a connection in my brain to, oh, this is how you pronounce it. Oh, this is how you spell it. Oh, this is what it means. Oh, these are all the different kinds of plants. This is how you plant seeds. This is the life cycle of a plant. Those are all jumbled up in my mind, all about plants. But this connection is gone now because that connection has not been important. That connection has not been repeated 7 times. Maybe if they kept talking to me about it in grades 7, 8, and 9, it would have been helpful. And if they did, they were not getting me here. So I wasn't listening. I wasn't getting the ideas. So to encourage that remembering, we need 7 spaced encounters. If you might not have this, it might not be that interesting to you. But if you do this, then you've got understanding. The thing that we can do with homeschooling is we don't have to follow somebody else's plan. We don't have to. We can take the ideas that our kids are most interested in and teach them deeply and do things deeply with them. And then they will naturally get into the topic different ways. And they will help create their own spaced encounters. Questions? No? Okay, let me tell you, I got 2 stories, but I got to tell you, which one first? Okay, I'll tell you this one. I teach a Spanish class. I teach a couple Spanish classes, which I'm happy to teach. And why did we do mythology for 3 years? Says Julie, pretending to be Tyler. Because it was interesting, and now they deeply understand it, don't they? And I bet when Julie did mythology, they watched videos on it, they read stories about it, they wrote stories about it, they talked about it. Absolutely. So this is not from your Spanish class, Julie. It's from a different class. I was talking about Dia de los Muertos in Mexico. Oh, no, it wasn't. It was Cinco de Mayo. That was it. It was the 5th of May, which is a holiday or an acknowledgement in Mexico. And I said to the kids, I said, have any of you ever heard of this? Because we don't generally hear about this in Canada. And all of the kids, and there were 7 of them, they went, no idea. And then one of the moms showed up, because this was actually via Zoom that I was teaching. One of the moms' head pops into the video, pops this way, here she is. She's like, what do you mean? We went to Mexico in May and we totally talked about this and we totally learned about this. And I felt bad for the mom, because I bet she remembers it very well, because she was much more invested in learning about it because she was teaching it. The kids were semi-invested while on vacation in Mexico, but she couldn't expect them to remember that a year and a half later when they only talked about it on that one vacation. They needed the spaced repetition. And probably if I talked to them about it again now, because we talked about it in May, they probably still wouldn't remember it. And I know that, so I'm not going to be mad at them. So then there was my kid who's in grade 5. And last year, we did this big thing on the lines of longitude and the lines of latitude and time zones. And we connected it to traveling experiences, and we looked at globes, and we looked at maps, and we did math with it, and we watched a little video about it. I thought, this kid's got this. It's pretty good. Honest to God, this happened today. He was with his grandfather. And my dad said, guess what? Today we talked about this, and he learned about that. And I said, Roshan, did you remember any of that when we talked about it in the spring? He didn't. And I had walked away thinking, we did a good job with that. I'm not mad at him. I know it's because last spring, we only talked about it for a few weeks. And we've never talked about it again. But that's okay, because he talked about it now with Grandpa. And we're going to bring it back. I might bring it back next year. I might bring it back in a little while later, or the next time we look at a map, it's going to come back. So he will learn those ideas. Does it matter if he doesn't? Does it matter if he doesn't know that the prime meridian goes through Greenwich, England, and is like 0 longitude? No. You know what matters? Is if he can find information from credible sources himself. Because that's where we live now, being able to find credible information. All you got to do is Google it. You just got to make sure who you read makes sense. That's what I'm going to repeat more than 7 times in his childhood. How to do research and find credible sources. And so when he's 25 and he forgets about the lines of longitude, the repetition that we did was how to find that information. And so he'll just Google lines of longitude and he'll look at, okay, who's telling me? What are these sources? Which ones am I going to trust? All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to step back. Literally, I'm not going to do this. No, I was going to do that. Okay, I want you to step back or push your chair back. Push your chair right back. I can't see you, so I'm just trusting you're listening to me. Rebecca, I don't know, you're on the hot spot now. Okay, I want you to cross your arm over and we're going to stretch this way. You can give yourself a bit of a hug. Half hug, I guess. We're going to go the other way. Stretch over, give yourself a hug. And let's do a proper hug this way. I wish we weren't recording. I want to see you. Do a proper hug this way. Awesome. Okay, now sit in your seats if you're not sitting there. Can you lift your feet parallel to the ground? Can you lift your feet and hover them? You got to engage your abs. Got it? So now I want you to do scissors. I want you to crisscross your legs and do scissors. Now you're engaging your abs. Samuel's going to come in from the waiting room and say, what is going on here? Okay, take a relax. Okay, y'all just look up at your ceiling for one moment and notice if you like your ceiling or you don't. I'm just going to ask you to answer in the chat. Christina, do you like your ceiling in the room you're in? Yes or no? Just a yes, no. Meh. I don't know if Tammy's there. I lost my thing here. Becky, do you like the ceiling in the room you're in? Becky's got nothing, or she can't find her chat. Okay. How about Melanie? Do you like the ceiling of the room you're in? Oh, Becky, no. Just telling my husband what a great teacher. Okay, well, Shireen, do you like your ceiling? You're off topic. Oh, me too. Melanie, I have that. I watch like Home and Garden Network, and I'm like, yeah, if I had money, which we will never get rid of the popcorn. Look at all you sharing with me, because we just patched it. My ceiling has a sword slash. Now that sounds like a ceiling. Need new light fixtures. Gotcha. And y'all are saying, what the heck is this woman doing? All right, I just got to go on to something and then come back. This is brain information. This is real information you need to know. All of those activities that you could do with your social studies, with your science, with anything. So you could do a project, you could build about it with Lego, you could have great discussions about it, you could read stories about it. None of it's going to help if you don't do this. You need time away from learning. You need time on a completely different topic than what you're actually learning about. You need to have short sessions, unless you got a kid who's totally into it, which they could very well be, and you could talk for hours, but you need short sessions of learning and not one long period. When we do math, and this is just me, everybody does their own thing, but we've had success where we only do 15 or 20 minutes a day ever. That's it. That's all. And he's in grade 5. And he's doing fine in his math. But you know what else? Every now and then we do it at a different time of day in a different way. So we do something called walk and talk math, where we go for a walk in the neighborhood and we talk about our math concepts. We bring chalk sometimes and we write on the road as we're walking. So I was doing fractions last year on the road and we would talk about it, then we'd walk and talk, or we'd draw on the snow with a stick. So that ended up being a longer session because we were moving and it was just different and interesting. But when it comes down to sitting down with our book, short sessions works for us. Any of this other business is not processing time. that is still learning time. Just because we stop talking and we tell them to do work, they're still learning. They need to have processing time and they need to sleep. Sleep is very important for the brain to integrate information. So if we talk about the state of your ceiling, the other stuff that we talked about previous, okay, those connections are working. Those connections are starting to get more solid and consider situations and make those connections. But the connections about ceiling are now wired and live. So now your head is just talking about ceilings, but over here, the stuff we talked about is settling. Questions or ideas? Okay, so we've said this. 7 spaced encounters. The only subject area, okay, I'm just going to come back to those. The only subject area where doing more makes sense is reading. That's the only area. The more science you do, the more topic of plants you do, the faster you teach it, the more you teach it, the faster they forget it, and the more they forget it. The more and faster you teach, the more and faster they forget. So you have to spread it out. And you have to also decide, and let me tell you, teachers don't teach the whole curriculum ever. They look at their curriculum and they don't, I've told some of you this already, they never teach a whole, like grade 7 science, they usually never get to the rocks, earth crust one. They only do the other topics because they don't have time, they've got too much going on. But it's also better teaching to do less. But you're like, but they missed the whole unit on the earth crust. Do they know how to Google it and find credible sources? They can find all the information they need about the Earth's crust. And if they're a geologist, they go into that area, they'll have interest in it and they'll learn it more deeply. For those of us who igneous rocks and that kind of stuff isn't that interesting, if I need it, I'll Google it, right? So the more and faster you teach, the more and faster they forget, unless it's reading. Reading is the one area where the more you do, the better they get. So the more they read, the more vocabulary they have encounters with. Remember 7 spaced encounters? Well, if they're reading, they're encountering words over and over again, and they're encountering words in different situations. That is helping the connections for that vocabulary. So plant, the more I read, I learn about plants and flowers, but now I'm getting another connection that it means a factory. That's another connection for the reading. The more I read, the better I read, the deeper I understand the vocabulary. This also is true for the discussions you have. When you're talking to your kids, use big words and intentionally use them more. What was the word I used? Representation. We were talking about, if you, actually I'm going to change to black. I think my black marker works better. So my kid was reading a comic and there was like a light bulb over the head of a character in the comic. All right, in the chat, what did that light bulb above the character's head mean? What did it mean? Thought idea. Anyone else? Do you agree with Christina or do you have any other ideas? Agreed. No one's talking. I lost them all because I've talked more than how many minutes? 15 minutes. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, yeah. How do you know that? Because you've encountered this symbol many times in your life. That's why. My 6-year-old looked over and said it means idea. Yeah, go 6-year-old. So my kid asked this, and I thought, okay, I could say it means, oh, Becky's been doing her learning. It means an idea, but I didn't say that. I said it represents an idea. This is a trick. What did Patrice say? The character was looking at his ceiling and saw the light bulb on it. Very good. Clever. So I said it represents that the character had an idea. I didn't say it means the character had an idea. What I'm getting at here is if you can intentionally use those bigger words, doesn't matter the age of your kid, and keep bringing them back as you interact in your whole life, you are building the vocabulary of your child, and they're getting the 7 spaced encounters in many different ways. So your kid, and the 6-year-old probably already knows, Melanie, what sibling means. Sibling means brother or sister. So with those little ones, maybe they learn the word brother and sister. Push them to the next one. We're going to say sibling because it includes both, all the brothers and sisters. Push them to the trickier words, no matter what level. And I know homeschoolers then sound like they're all nerds because they have really big vocabulary, but that's okay. Once they get to be adults, they're not going to sound like nerds. All right. Questions or comments? Let's go back and see what some of these ideas are. So according to research on the brain, we need 7 spaced encounters to really make that connection stick. If you have an emotional connection with something, you can have fewer encounters. Novelty will help things stick also. So if you go take your math outside as something different, that will create a connection. I'll show you one quick picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. These are my nephews. And the little one, I think, is in kindergarten here. Might be 4 years old. And this one, I think, is 7. And so instead of doing our math in our book, we did our math on a fence. And we made the number line on the fence. This is just novelty. It's the same thing in a different way. And as soon as you do that, your brain goes, okay, I'm going to pay attention because this is new and different and fun. And if I get to karate kick, that is going to create a stronger idea, a stronger connection. So novelty, doing something different, going to the museum, having your discussions in the museum is different. Having a class or a discussion with your friends, maybe the parent facilitates it. That's different. That's a neat way to learn. So that will help those connections grow stronger. Engage the senses is just that. Smelling, hearing, tasting, if you can combine that into any of your lessons, that would be great. And as we've said, many different ways. So what are those many ways? Here's some ideas. Okay, you could have discussions, answer questions, solve problems. Remember, everything doesn't have to be reading and writing, and everything doesn't have to be writing. Like you could be a scribe if you want it in that written form. Building with Lego, building with blocks, building with crafting materials, show your ideas that way. Make a graphic organizer, make a poster in PowerPoint to show your understanding. Retell from another perspective. Critique. I don't agree with this. This is why. Jennifer was telling me about her daughter is very much looking at different perspectives in the world and seeing the world from different points of view. That is huge. And then you can critique something that's written and say, why is it written like this? Who wrote it? Who did they write it for? And why did they write it? Those are good questions to always ask. Who wrote this? Who did they write it for? Did they write it for people like me who look like me from my background? And why did they write it? So their daughter is now working on these ideas, analyzing, summarizing. Again, it doesn't have to be in writing. The more you read, the better you read. And in the end, they will be writers if they're reading more, if it's possible. Questions? I'm going to stop sharing. How many spaced encounters might you suggest? So the spaced encounters is 7, but it's over months. It's not over days. So you do want to do spaced encounters in the short time, like this week and next week, but you want to bring it back. Other questions or ideas? Okay, I want you all to think about your math books and the math you're doing with your kids. Okay, so think about the math books you have. And are those books organized, or those programs organized into big sections? Do they have a section on problem solving and geometry? Do they have a section about numbers like division, multiplication? Do they have a section on data management? Okay, as best as you can remember, can you write the answer in chat? Yes, it has big sections like that. Or no, it doesn't. Or you have the I have no idea because I haven't looked that far into the book yet or the program yet. Small sections. Yeah. Yeah. Smart, good. If they repeat, that's awesome. So lots of books do this, and I'm not selling this book. Small and big, good. I use Jump Math. I love it because it has lots of repetition. And as we come to things, if it's repeated, and if he gets it, we don't spend a lot of time on it. But if he forgets it from last year or from last month, then he will spend more time on it. But here's a trick. It's something you can do. You can work with your numbers, your multiplication, your division, and whatnot. You don't have to keep going with that. You don't have to go all the way through the number section and then all the way through geometry. Do the first few pages of numbers and then jump to geometry. Okay, do a few pages of geometry, then come back to the numbers. Do a few pages of numbers and go back to geometry. And if you look ahead in the book, there's things they can do without knowing everything in the previous section. Data management is graphing. Well, they can do some work with graphing without having finished geometry. And so the idea is we work through different sections, but we keep coming back to the previous sections. And by the time we get through the end of the book, it was not page 1 to page 100. It was page 1 to 5, page 30 to 35, page 5 to 10. Then we do a few pages here, then we do a few pages there. And the whole reasoning is the coming back to the information. Science fairs, scientific, what's it called? The scientific method, where you make a hypothesis, you predict what's going to happen, you get all your materials together, you do your experiment with a procedure, and then what do you do at the end? You do your observations and make a conclusion. We don't remember all the experiments we did in school. But do you remember how to do experiments in that big way? Okay, make a hypothesis, figure out your procedure, get your materials together, do it, and make some observations, and then have a conclusion. Doesn't have to be written, it can be talking. If you do this over and over in your school life, you're gonna walk out of your school career knowing, okay, I'm gonna make a hypothesis based on what I already know. And then I'm gonna just try and do an experiment here. These are the procedures. So you don't have to know every little experiment you did in school. You have to know the big idea of how to do experiments, okay? You don't have to know if you're going to go to post-secondary and essays are important to you, you don't have to know about every essay you wrote about, but you have to know the big idea of how to write an essay, of how to write a paragraph. So schooling can be problem solving, communicating, literacy, and how to find out information with a good search. Incredible resources. All the other stuff is trivia. At this point in our world, it's trivia because I can Google about glucose in plants. Why aren't many math books organized in this manner? Because they're not research-based or they are up on the current research. And that's basically why. This research has sort of come to light in the past 20 years only. What's happened is they've taken neuroscience and they've got a few educators who are now interpreting the neuroscience and making it accessible to teachers. And so have the people who've written the books consider this. I will say for the jump math, you could go beginning to end because there is enough built-in repetition, but I like to do even more. But yeah, it just depends on who wrote the book and what they know about learning, because we don't think about it, or they don't think about this. But I have to tell you something. This is my problem right now. Do you see the problem? How long have I been talking? How long have you been sitting there, and did you tune out? Did you tune out? Okay, I know you did. Some of you did at some point. So this is tricky, and this is a tricky part of these kind of presentations, is because it's not a lot of activities. It's just giving information, and I know you're going to tune out. So this is where this comes in. Sometimes we can't help it. Sometimes you can't be at home learning and work with the pace of your child and take lots of breaks. Sometimes your kids have to go and take a class elsewhere, or they're taking a high school class, or they're going into post-secondary, or they're listening to someone like me drone on, and they have to learn to take notes. What happens when they're feeling sleepy? How can they help themselves? Well, this is a way to help yourself, and you could do this right now, yourself right this second, okay? It's okay to stand up. And I tell all my classes, you can stand up anytime during my class. You can lean against the wall, you can lean against the back, you can pace at the back of the room a little bit, that's fine. And I would encourage you, if you are a student or your kid is a student, to ask the teacher, is it okay if sometimes I stand at the back? I learn better that way. The truth is we all learn better if we have that movement. We need those movement breaks. Another way to stay awake is by taking a little risk. So how do you take a little risk? If you're in a class and you're not the person who likes to ask questions, your risk could be, okay, I'm going to try to ask a question. So I have to listen really carefully. If you challenge yourself, suddenly, bing, your brain lights up and you're like, okay, there's going to be a risk going on here. I have to be focused and in it. It can go the opposite. Another learning risk might be to not ask a question. Are you the person that talks all the time? Okay, or if you get in a discussion group, you can't stop talking. So your chance, your learning risk would be to try to not talk. And you know what happens? Suddenly you're alert because you're forcing yourself to not talk and to listen to others. This is something the learner has to do themselves. So you need to talk to your students, your kids, about this. You can do this one. This is like, if we get this done, we get to go play tennis. It's like an artificial urgency. If we get this done, we can leave earlier. As soon as we get this done, we can have a snack. That kind of urgency can cause a person to focus, but you can't do it every single day because it won't work if it gets to be monotonous. talked a bit about novelty. Take them outside. Learning outside will wake a person up. Okay? Yes, you can do this. That's what a lot of us do as adults. And take those breaks. You know what? We're not going to spend 3 hours sitting at the table learning. We're going to spend 20 minutes. And then we're going to do these chores. And then we're going to do another little bit. Then we're going to go for a walk. Then we're going to do another little bit. Or if you think you can focus, we'll get it all done now and then we'll do those things. Questions or ideas? Thank you, Camille. She messaged privately. So here's another one for you. Oh my God, you know what? This is more than 3 to 7 new pieces of information. And if we had time, I would make you sit down and put all these ideas together. But we're not going to have time. But I have to tell you about this. Yes, you can watch the recording. There you have it. Levels of awakeness plays into the focus idea. Everybody has their own body clock. This is also, you know, by the way, I'm not making any of this up. Okay, this is coming from researchers other than me. I'm just giving you the information. We all have a body clock. We know that we sleep deeply sometimes and then less deeply. And the less deeply is when we dream, right? If I wanted to know that what it's called, I could Google it and know the sources that were credible. So I could tell you that, but I don't know. I just know we sleep deeply and less deeply. We also are awake. We are more awake and we are less awake during the days. You know if you're the person who wants to take a nap at 2 o'clock every day. Some of us have that. You know if you're the night owl who naturally wants to stay up later, or if you're a morning person, you're naturally happy in the morning. We all have levels of awakeness. We have a huge advantage as homeschoolers to be able to watch our kids and talk to our kids and notice when are they awake, when is their best time to learn. We know it's better for teenagers to sleep in. Naturally, that's their circadian rhythm in general. Teenagers stay up later and their brain cannot shut down and go to sleep. But they also sleep later. And there's schools in the States who are experimenting with having schools start learning between 9:30 and 10 instead of learning between 8:30 and 9, hoping to get the teenagers awake more when they come. But we can do that. As homeschoolers, we can start to watch our kids. And I know that I cannot give any new information to my kid at 4 o'clock or later in the day, unless he initiates it. But there's no chance of me sitting down and saying, hey, you want to talk about Vikings? I know you've been reading that Viking book. He is not, and there's no chance of pulling out the math at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. He's done. I know his best times. His best time is between 10 and 12 in the morning. That's when we do our work. So you kind of have to watch and notice when are your kids most alert, because just like all of us, they're going to have more awake times and more sleepy times in the day. And in those sleepy times, go play with Lego, go read your own book, go watch a documentary, do whatever you want, okay? Because my effect is not going to be huge during those times, and we're just going to end up fighting. So we have levels of awakeness, which is what I've got here. We cycle through different levels of awakeness. And so if we can start to notice those levels of awakeness in our kids. So lastly, I'm just going to do a quick review of what we've done and then send you someplace to learn more in the future. If you only give information and do nothing with it, this is how fast we're going to forget it. So there's no point. You're just wasting your time and wasting their time if you don't plan on bringing it back, or if it's not going to come back naturally at some point. If you are explaining something, this is how much time you have before they're going to naturally turn off. They can't help it. Their brains will physically just stop listening. And this is where I'm feeling bad and hoping that you're using some of those awakeness strategies to push through here. We can only handle 3 to 7 new concepts at a time, but that's okay. Because if we're bringing back and building on ideas, that's okay, because then we'll do 3 big ideas and we'll add some information tomorrow and we'll add new ideas tomorrow. I'll give you one more example. Someone on Facebook was asking about spelling lists. If you choose to do a spelling program or spelling lists, a great way to handle it is to just do 3 to 7 new words on Monday, but talk about the words, work on the meaning, look at the prefixes, look at the suffixes, read about them. Hopefully your program has them written into a little text or paragraph, but that would be Monday. And then on Tuesday, you're going to review those first words and add a few more. So you're going to do something different. Today, we're going to draw pictures of our new words, or we're going to think of synonyms of our words, and we're going to practice spelling them again. On Wednesday, we're going to add a few new words. So by Wednesday, we're all the way at 15 words maybe, but we have to do something else with them. We're going to practice spelling them, and I want you to make up a story. Can you get all 15 words in the story? And you don't have to do it writing. You can do it talking. You can make me a little audio recording. It can be pretty funny, right? And then Thursday, you might have more words, or that might be it. We're just going to review everything on Thursday. And then if you want to have your test on Friday, that's fine. It's a lot trickier if you give 20 new words on Monday, okay? Because you want to go deeper. And this is where don't teach 10 different things. Teach the same thing 10 different ways. Working with your ideas in many different ways. I simply brainstormed here some ideas, but there's lots more. You're not going to do what I did for the last half hour. You're going to stop. You're going to do the dishes. Make them do the dishes and tell them, this is how you're learning, because your brain is settling. But it is. Okay, let them have a nap because it's helping them learn. The only one we're going to say that you don't teach faster with is reading. The more you read, the better you read. The more you read, the deeper your vocabulary. The more you read, the grammar gets repeated too. So if you don't want to teach explicit grammar, that's how grammar constructions can also be repeated in their heads. And then the last one is focus. So this is where I want to send you before I open it up to questions. The Fantastic Elastic Brain is an excellent book that's accessible to all age groups. Reading out loud is just as valuable as kids reading to themselves. In fact, research shows you should be reading out loud to children until they're at least 14, up to 14 years old. They should have regularly hear other people read to them. And that, again, makes them better readers and have deeper vocabulary. So in addition to them reading for themselves, you're reading to them. So Fantastic Elastic Brain is a book that you can share with them. If you're not doing this already, you can find books on YouTube where people read them out loud, so you don't have to get them from the library or buy them. When I worked most recently with this book, I just turned off the sound and I went through the YouTube video and I just moved ahead by each page and I read it out loud and we talked about it. Then I moved ahead in the YouTube video and I read it out loud. So we could have listened to that other person read it, or you could read it. Another part of this is teaching your kids how they learn, teaching your kids the stuff we've talked about today. And to be honest, that's, besides the digestive system, that's all my kid knows, is stuff about the brain when it comes to human biology. Because I think it's really important he understands what's going on with his learning and how he can help himself. And this also moves into, this is your other piece of homework, growth mindset and fixed mindset. We're not going to have time to talk about this today, but I could do a whole hour with discussions on this one. Growth mindset is the idea of when they say, I can't do it, I can't do piano, I suck. You have to say, yet. Okay, I'm not good at art yet. Okay, because you can. What happens if you say you can't is you won't. And remember those neurons? When they make connections with beliefs. If you believe you can't, and you tell yourself you can't, if you tell yourself you suck at math, and you have this, and then that myelin is going to grow over top of it, and you're going to have a really firm belief that you can't do math. But you can. Because your brain can rewire and change and learn. You can learn math. We just have to take the little steps to get the neurons talking. And so if you understand that, then you can move from there. That's called growth mindset. There's tons of resources on teaching kids growth mindset. And you can. Okay, I think I've talked a lot, and I know I've talked too much. Can you please ask any questions or any comments in chat, or if you want to take your mute off, you can ask me in person. You definitely haven't talked too much. That means you're into it, you're engaged. If I was talking about glucose in plants, you might not have thought that. Okay, other questions or ideas? Can I talk to you about my dear friend Patrice, whose daughter was asked to memorize all the waterways in Canada? And I said, okay, she can memorize it. You can spend 5 days memorizing them and locating them on a map. And then her daughter was supposed to take a test. She can throw up that information onto the piece of paper and take the test. What's going to happen after that? She's not going to remember a single one of those waterways if that's the way it's handled in her school, which it will be. But if her kid knows how to look up the waterways in Canada, okay, she's good to go. Shireen, yes, the Big Life Journal is excellent. We actually bought a copy of one and are starting it. And the Big Life Journal is about growth mindset. All right, there's another one. Yep. Okay, any other questions or comments before we say goodbye? No. Okay, so you probably know who I am on Facebook if you're there. This is who I am. Oh, I just wrote it to Camille only. Okay, so this, I go by this because I don't want people finding me, basically all my former students. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to find me there on Facebook. You can private message me or whatever. Are any kids not naturally inclined to certain subjects? Oh, sorry, that was a private question, but I'll say yes. They can be not inclined or not interested, but it doesn't mean they can't do it. So I had an adult say to me recently, the only time I use math is when I do my taxes, when I do my budgeting, and basic shopping weights and measures. I don't think about math in any other way. And he's a musician. And I said to him, well, but if you wanted to change your career, do you think you could? Do you think you could learn it? He's like, yeah, I could. That's what this is. He could. But the answer to the question is yes, we do have our strengths and areas we're more inclined to. That is for sure. But it's not that you can't do other things. Okay, other questions or ideas? All right, then we're going to be done. Yes, I can give a PowerPoint. I guess I can give it to us, Jennifer, and we can email it to the people who were here. And then you will all have access to a recording of this presentation. Or it's going to be emailed to you, is my understanding. Yeah, see, because I went too fast, Adrian, right? It was too much too fast. I'm going to forget by tomorrow morning. Sorry. All right, we're done. Okay, we're done. We're going to say goodbye to everybody. If you have any other questions, you can ask me on email, and you're going to get all the information. Ask me on Facebook. You ask me on Facebook, and we're going to email you the PowerPoint and the recording. Okay? All right. Have a good evening.